everything is going to hell down here in Texas.
What's up, everybody? It's Big Bad Bob with you here today. That's right. Where research comes to shine and myths come to die. This is your host, Rob Clark. Stay tuned. Be right there.
Everybody, and welcome to the show. This is episode number 195 of the Lone Gunman podcast, and I have a very special guest with me today who has been researching the Kennedy assassination for quite a while now. You can find his work posted on the Education Forum. A lot of the topics he covers are the jet effect, the warnings, the limo agents, the bus transfer, or the bullets fired from the depository rifle. And you can also find a lot of his work at Gil-Jesus.com. That's GIL-JESUS.com. A lot of his work there features work on the lineups, the Tippit bullets and shells, some of the timing evidence, the witnesses, the jacket, and a lot of it is focusing on whether or not Lee Harvey Oswald was actually guilty. So it's my pleasure to welcome Gil Jesus to the show. Hello, Gil.
How are you? Thank you for having me on your show. I appreciate it.
No problem. I'm doing great. I just worked a 10-hour shift, and but I'm psyched, and I'm very excited to talk to you. So the energy is still there. So I'm happy for that. Yeah.
We'll have some very interesting revelations tonight for your listeners.
Good. I'm looking forward to it. But before we do that, Gil, just give me an idea of what sparked your interest into the Kennedy assassination, how you got started on all this.
Well, I became interested in the Kennedy assassination. I was a young boy. It's 1966. I was about 12 years old and always loved President Kennedy. And on one particular day, I was in a local library and I picked up one of the 26 volumes of the Warren Commission hearings and started to read it. My dad had been a police officer for 3 years at that time, and I used to read his police reports. He would type at home. My dad wasn't very good in spelling, so I would spell check his reports, but at the same time, I'd read them. And in the usual kid fashion, I'd ask Dad a lot of questions about things, cases that he had. And sure. So this gave me kind of like carte blanche to every one of his reports for like the next 7 or 8 years. And it also piqued my interest in the criminal justice system, and that interest continued through my high school years. And finally, after high school, I attended a 2-year college and received an associate's degree in criminal justice. So I worked on 2 local police departments for several years in the 1970s and 80s, and then later spent 16 years in industrial security for a major Massachusetts corporation as a shift commander and investigator. These experiences allowed me to become involved in interrogation, searches, case preparations, and appearances in court to give testimony. I was first introduced to the concept of conspiracy by the revelation in February of '67 by Jim Garrison that he had secretly been investigating the possibility of a conspiracy in the Kennedy assassination. So at a young age, Jim Garrison kind of like became my hero. I couldn't make sense of all of this stuff that I was reading when I'd go to the library and read the Warren hearings. I couldn't make sense of it. And then when Garrison came out and said, he had been investigating this thing and he thought there was a conspiracy involved. And I'm like, wow, now it makes sense why it didn't make sense. Right. So over the years, I've compiled a small library of books by various authors and videos by various sources. In 2007, I brought my battle for the truth to the internet, launching my JFK channel on YouTube. And that's YouTube /JFK63 Conspiracy, which has video clips of events occurred during the Kennedy years. More importantly, it includes video from eyewitnesses explaining their own words and what they saw and what they knew. So that's pretty much how I got started.
Excellent. Yeah, I was looking for your YouTube channel and I couldn't find it. So thank you for letting everybody know out there what the title of it is.
And there's also a link on my website.
Okay, great. Good deal. Yeah.
On the first page, on the front page, there's a link to my YouTube channel, so you can go right from my website.
So, I mean, being a former police officer and investigator, you know, and plus, you know, all those times helping your dad out, and so you really have a good understanding when it comes to examining a lot of the evidence in the case.
And I'm looking at it from a different perspective. You know what I mean? The people in the beginning who looked at this evidence and said something's wrong here, these guys were all lawyers. Mark Lane was a lawyer. Jim Garrison was a lawyer. And they were the ones who said, there's something wrong here. And so when I started, and all of these guys were lawyers. So they're the only ones that understood that there was something wrong. The average layman didn't get it, you know, because these guys had already been looking at it from a different perspective. They've been looking at it from a legal perspective. And I think that's something that I bring to the table, that I'm looking at it from a different perspective. I'm not looking at it just to read it. You know what I mean? I'm looking at it and I'm saying, why is this like this? And why is this like that? And how can it be? How can that be? And this doesn't add up and that doesn't add up. And the case itself was so fraudulent. It'll take me a while to explain it all. But I mean, as we go through the evidence, you're going to see that this case against Oswald, I believe the reason why Ruby killed him was to prevent him from going to the trial, because this would have exposed this case like you wouldn't believe.
Oh yeah, if he started talking, they were going to definitely be in trouble.
If he had a decent defense lawyer and he looked at this evidence, he'd say, this is crazy. This guy shouldn't even be here. And the things that they did, to him, like deny him legal assistance, they didn't allow him to make a phone call until Saturday. Why? Because who's a New York lawyer? He wants a New York lawyer. What New York lawyer is going to be in his office on a Friday night after 5 o'clock? So they wait until Saturday. Yeah, they know he's not going to get him, so they wait till Saturday before they give him his phone call. I mean, things like this. Put him in a lineup with 3 teenagers and a Mexican. Come on, the guy's all battered and bruised and beaten. Who's not going to pick him? You know, I mean, these lineups weren't fair. It's ridiculous. It's the most ridiculous thing I've ever seen. You know, and they got away with it.
Oh yeah, yeah. And well, let's get into some of this evidence, Gil.
Sure.
You know, that's all after Oswald was arrested and everything. But I want to go back to some of the stuff going on in their school book depository. Mm-hmm. And let's talk about let's get into the rifle and let's get into some of the timing aspects going on in there with the movements of Oswald and what could possibly have been going on in there.
Mm-hmm. All right. Let's see what we got for the rifle. The rifle is an interesting subject because they used, when they did the tracking of the rifle, the FBI produced documents on the shipping of the rifle. These shipping documents had nothing to do with this rifle, first of all. It's amazing. The stuff that they put out here, it didn't have the cotton number. It didn't have the serial number of the rifle. It didn't have the cotton number of the rifle. This evidence was, you say, what is this evidence of? All it is a bunch of rifles that are being taken out of the warehouse, but you don't know what rifles involved.
Right. So you're talking about the stuff coming from the rifle allegedly coming from Klein's to the post office box. The shipping
of it.
Right.
Now there were reports that a Mauser was found in the building, and I did something on a Mauser a long time ago. I ended up deleting it, but it's possible there could have been a Mauser in the room. I mean, you got 3 sheriff's deputies that claimed that the thing was a 7.65 Mauser. So I mean, how do you discount that? You know, when 3 different people say the same thing.
Wasn't the rifle that Oswald originally ordered from Klein's, wasn't that supposed to be a 7.65 millimeter Carcano, or am I wrong?
No, it was a 6.5.
Well, I
It
know
was a
that's what he
six-
got, but I thought he had ordered something different.
No. He ordered
No?
a six. He ordered a 6.5, but the one he ordered was a 36-inch rifle. The one in the Texas School Book Depository was 40 inches long.
Gotcha. Yeah, that's what it was. Okay.
And the paperwork I'll explain to you what happened. What they did was they bought the 40-inch. Whoever set him up bought the 40-inch rifle. Okay, and then after that, they had to go back and fake the paperwork. But when they went back to fake the paperwork, see, they had to have him buy the rifle before April. Otherwise, he couldn't have shot at General Walker. See, they were trying to prove that he shot at Walker. So they ordered the 40-inch rifle after April because I think it was April 63 when Klein started selling that 40-inch rifle. They didn't sell it in March when he was supposedly ordered it. Yeah, they didn't sell it in March when he supposedly ordered it. They didn't sell it, I think it was till April of 63. It might have been even later than that. I'm not sure. I'd have to look it up. But so they went back and got the paperwork, but they found out the paperwork was the ad was for a 36-inch rifle. So they had the paperwork made up for the 36-inch rifle. They just changed and added the serial number on the 30s from the 40-inch rifle and put it on the 36-inch rifle paperwork. So all the paperwork indicates a 36-inch rifle, but the rifle in the Texas School Book Depository is a 40-inch rifle. And another thing is they never mounted the scope on a 40-inch rifle, Klein's. They never mounted the scope on that rifle. What they did do was they ordered the serial number, the model number, or the order number that was for the 36-inch rifle was for the scope mounted. Klein's didn't mount the scope on the 40-inch rifle. They didn't offer it like that. So the only one that was ordered as a package with the scope mounted was the 36. So when they went back to forge the paperwork, all they had was selling back there was a 36. So they made the paperwork up for a 36. All they did was they wrote in the number of the serial number for the 40-inch rifle.
Gotcha.
You know what I mean? So
yeah,
all of this paperwork wasn't made before. In other words, this paperwork wasn't made before the rifle was sold, before the 40-inch rifle was sold. This paperwork was made after the 40-inch rifle was sold. This is what I believe, anyways. And when you take a look at you go down even further. It's not even the order number that's the problem, okay? Because the order blank that he used had the same 36-inch rifle number. This is all forged. This is all stuff that they did. The
Marina
envelope
allegedly wrote, right?
Yeah, the envelope that he allegedly mailed the money order in is postmarked March 12th at 10:30, or I think it's 10:30 or 10:40 a.m. Let me scroll up and see what it is. It's I think it's 10:30, and he was at work. He has a worksheet that says that he was at work between 8 o'clock and noontime. So
yeah, and I don't think the mailbox was like down at the corner. I think it was.
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't alongside his machine, you know.
Right.
Work. So there's no way he could get over there 3 postal zones away to buy the money order because it was bought in the central post office. And
that doesn't make sense.
He was at work, so he couldn't buy the money order. He couldn't mail the envelope, you know. And so then how did he receive it? Then the next question is, how did he receive it? The Part 3 of the postal box application was supposed to have the name of A. Hidell on it. Right. And when the FBI looked at it, the FBI said there was nobody's name on it. The FBI got to look at it. It's not in. They destroyed it. It's not in any evidence. But before they destroyed it, the FBI got to look at it and said there was nobody else's name on that. So A. Hidell could not have received a rifle at Box 2915 in Dallas because his name wasn't on Part 3 of the post office box application as being one people who could get it other than Oswald.
Yeah, because he would have had to go to the counter. Probably, I guess they would have put a slip in his box because they couldn't fit this rifle in his PO box.
Right. They would have put a slip in.
So,
but the thing is, A. Hidell couldn't even receive mail at that box because his name wasn't on the application.
Right, exactly.
All right, so the FBI, now I'm looking at Commission Exhibit 2585. It says Oswald did not, this is the FBI now, Oswald did not indicate on his application that others, including A. Hidell, would receive mail through box in question, which was Post Office 29, Box 2915 in Dallas. So he couldn't receive any mail there. He couldn't receive the rifle. And I'll ask people the question all the time, these Warren Commission supporters. Well, who was it that handed Oswald his rifle in the post office? And one clown says, well, whoever was on the desk that day. And my question is, well, what day was that? And they can't answer it. You hear the crickets in the background. They can't answer it.
Yeah, and who was it that broke the protocol?
Yeah. Because their argument is, well, they ran out of 36-inch rifles, so they shipped them a 40. No, I'm not. There's no evidence of that. There's no evidence. Listen, there's no evidence that Oswald ever ordered or received a 40-inch rifle, period. And when you look at the postal regulations, this is all posted on my website, that they destroyed that Part 3, like I told you, that because they were trying to hide the fact that A. Hidell's name was not on the application. So they destroyed that part. Now, when he appeared before the Warren Commission, the postal inspector, Harry Holmes, said that he destroyed it when the box was closed, and that was the rule. That's not the rule. I've got the regulations, the postal regulations on my website. It says that Part 3 has to be kept for 2 years after the box is closed. So he lied. He lied under oath. He perjured himself. Yeah, and then, of course, I got the worksheet from Oswald saying that the post office window didn't open till 8 a.m. So he was at work at that time. And then we have the money order itself. Here's a money order that's stamped First National Bank of Chicago by Klein Sporting Goods and no other stamp on it. How did this post money order get through the postal system and through the financial system without going through the Federal Reserve Bank in Chicago? How did it not get stamped by this is just a stamp for deposit. Yeah. This is not a stamp that it was paid. It's ridiculous. And then I got Oswald's paychecks there, and you can see that it's been stamped by the Federal Reserve Bank. And this is the way it is. When an order is deposited in a bank for collection, this is a 1925 postal guide, an order thus paid should bear upon its back the impression of the stamp of the bank. But it doesn't have the stamp of the bank. It's just got the stamp from Klein's for the bank to put it in their account. And then there's the phony deposit. They give this Waldman Exhibit 10 as a proof of the deposit, but it's not the deposit of the money order. This money order, and if you look at the deposit slip, the deposit slip is dated February 15th, 1963. February, not March, where Oswald ordered this rifle. Now, the big list of all the deposits is listed as 313, March 13th. But this is the FBI trying to pass this off as a deposit on 313. It is not. What it is it's a deposit on 215-63. Okay? And the big list that's marked 313 is the monthly statement of all the checks that they deposited.
Gotcha.
You follow me? Yeah.
Yeah, because if he would have ordered it on the 12th, there's no way they could have got that money order and deposited it by the 13th. I wouldn't think.
Well, they sent it airmail, so who knows? Who knows? But the point is that the deposit slip says 215-63. So what that tells me is that Klein's made the deposit once a month, okay? Mm-hmm. And their bank statement came on the 13th of the month. They made the deposit on the 15th of the month so that it would show up on the next deposit on the next bank statement.
Right.
And people would argue, well, that they just got the date wrong on that. No, listen, there isn't a bank in the world that will allow you to make a deposit with the wrong date on it.
Right.
That's ridiculous, because even if you put the wrong date on it, they're going to correct it, or they're going to fill out another one. They're not going to let a deposit slip. These banks they're very particular in their paperwork, So then they get the guy from the bank, First National Bank of Chicago, on there, and he says that's not that 2145 that you got there up on the list on the statement was for an American Express money order, which was sent to And he names, he says where it is right on the list. And that's the one where the Warren Commission said that was the money order. He's saying, no, this is an American Express money order. This isn't a postal money order. So they were full of beans on that one. And of course, like I said, if A. Hidel's name wasn't on the application, it says here any mail addressed to a person at a post office box who is not authorized to receive mail shall be endorsed and addressee unknown and returned to sender when possible. So they either fudged the rules or they were lying.
Yeah, totally. And I mean, when it comes to this rifle, this rifle, I think that what Klein's bought a bunch of these surplus Italian World War II rifles from Crescent Firearms, and I think I can't remember if it was you or John Armstrong listed all this stuff from and all the batches of these Carcanos that were coming in and the serial numbers and all that. I mean, they had a lot of these guys on there trying to legitimize this rifle in the Warren Commission, and they wouldn't have jumped through all these hoops if there weren't glaring problems with it.
What really gets me about the Warren Commission is they accepted a whole bunch of junk as commission exhibits. One commission exhibit is the dental records of Jack Ruby's mother. Can you believe that? Now,
that's crazy.
Now, Jim Garrison said it the best. He said, even if Ruby had intended to bite Oswald to death, that wasn't relevant.
No.
Okay, those dental records weren't relevant. But this is what they did. They didn't. Here they had what was it? Admiral Berkeley. Admiral George Berkeley was the president's physician. He was with the body at Parkland Hospital and at Bethesda at the autopsy. This is a man who could have cleared up any and all of the controversies involving the autopsy. Okay, they didn't even call him, but they called Dean Rusk. Dean Rusk was on Secretary of State. Dean Rusk was on a plane to Japan with the cabinet. Right. What the hell does he know about the assassination? But this is what they did. Important witnesses were cut out. Why? Because they didn't fit the narrative. Their stories didn't fit the narrative. Bill Newman and his wife Gail, they were among the closest to the president, saw his head explode, thought the shots came from the grassy knoll. They were never called. I mean, this wasn't an investigation. What this was a prosecutor's, what do they call that? A prosecutor's case for bringing charges against somebody. Like he would go before a grand jury. This is all the evidence that I have. And they limited who could go. The FBI was in charge of the witness list, so they were able to control what information was released. And all of these other people who saw something different, like Earlene Roberts in the Tippit murder, these people were never even called. As a matter of fact, Hoover said, don't even interrogate her. Don't even interview her. We don't want to hear what she's got to say. Imagine that. This is the FBI director telling the Dallas FBI, don't interview Earlene Roberts. Unbelievable. And I'll tell you something else about this rifle. I am not convinced that this rifle fired Commission Exhibit 399, the magic bullet.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think this rifle fired that bullet. And I'm going to tell you why. All of the bullets fired in 1963 were all matched. When the House Select Committee on Assassinations investigated the bullets from 63, they found out that they all matched. Now, they didn't say that they were fired out of the CE-139 rifle. That's the rifle that was supposedly found on the 6th floor. They didn't say that. They said they were all fired out of a weapon with the same barrel. And they said that for a reason. Now, I'm going to tell you what I think happened. And some of your listeners are going to think I'm crazy, but I'm going to show you how they did this.
All right.
What I believe is they fired these bullets out of another rifle. Okay. Then they took that rifle. They took the bolt from that rifle and the firing pin, which is like one unit. It's a bolt assembly, but the firing pin is in there. They took the bolt off of that rifle and they put it on the CE-139 rifle. Now, if they did that, I'm saying if they did that, any bullet fired from that rifle, the CE-139 rifle, would have the different markings on the bullets. but the shells would be the same because the bolt face markings and the firing pin markings would be identical. Okay? Now, keep that in mind because the House Select Committee on Assassinations fired that CE-139 rifle in 1978. And they found, they looked at the bullets from 63 and they said, yeah, they all match. They were all fired from the same rifle. But when they fired their test bullets in 78, their test bullets did not match the test bullets that were fired in 63. And all of those bullets match. That's the fragment bullets, that's the CE-399 bullet, and the two bullets that the CE-572 that the FBI fired in 1963. All of those bullets matched, but they didn't match the bullets fired in 78. Now, they knew the bullets they fired in 78 came from that rifle. So there's either two possibilities here. Either those bullets in 63 were fired from a different rifle, or the barrel of the rifle had deteriorated so much over the years from being shot and not being taken care of that the individual characteristics inside the barrel deteriorated. Okay, and that's the position they took. But the other possibility was that all of those bullets back in 63 were fired from a different rifle. That's what I believe. Now, when they tested those bullets, when they test fired those bullets, they found out the bullets didn't match 63, but the shells did. And that's how they said all of those bullets in 63 were fired from this rifle because the shells matched, not because the bullets matched, because they didn't. The shells matched. And I'm saying to you that if they changed the bolt and the bolt face, and that's what they used. They used the bolt face and the firing pin, and they took the bolt out of that rifle and put it in the depository rifle, then the shells would match, but the bullets wouldn't because the bullets had gone through a different barrel. See, but the shells would have been marked by the same bolt and the same firing pin if it had been changed. Now, the FBI did have an identical rifle to that one, what they call the replica rifle, Commission Exhibit 542. And this rifle they ordered from Klein supposedly to find out how they mounted the scope because Klein's didn't mount the scope on a 40-inch rifle. So they wanted to see how Klein's would mount the scope. Well, Klein's couldn't mount it because they never did it before. So the FBI had to tell them where to mount the scope. And that's all in Robert Frazier's testimony. And so if they ordered the rifle for them to mount the scope, why did they tell them how to mount the scope? You know what I mean? It's like giving somebody a test and giving them the answer before the test starts. It doesn't make sense. Maybe they had another reason for ordering this rifle because they couldn't get parts for it. They didn't know where to get parts for the rifles. And the Warren Commission had asked them, has the firing pin been changed? And I found that interesting. When the Warren Commission asked the FBI if the firing pin, the FBI says, well, we don't know where to get parts for it. We would have no idea. So we didn't even bother looking for places because we know it hasn't been changed. You know, but it may have been changed. They may have lied.
And it may have been swapped with the other rifle.
Right. They're interchangeable parts. They're identical rifles. How can you not interchange parts? Of course you can. So
plus they were breaking the rifles down into pieces to try to fit it into the supposed bag, you know, that Frazier was giving up.
The bag was made by the Dallas police.
Yeah, totally.
There's no doubt about that. There's no doubt about that. Yeah, that the only paper and tape that matched that paper and tape on that gun sack, that supposed gun sack, was the paper and tape that was on the shipping room tables on the afternoon of the assassination. What they did was they made the bag, used the tape from the dispenser to make the bag, and then after they took a sample of the tape and a sample of the paper. See, the Dallas cops were not too smart. They were trying to connect the bag with the Texas School Book Depository because they had already. This happened after 2:30 in the afternoon. They already had Oswald in custody. Okay, that building was empty by 2:30 in the afternoon, so they could do anything they wanted. So they went downstairs. They made the bag. They made the tape. Used the tape from the dispenser. The tape had all the markings from the dispenser on it. They made the bag. Then they took a sample of the tape and a sample of the paper. So when the FBI went there back 4 days later, the FBI wanted to make a replica bag. And they found out that the paper and the tape didn't match the one that was on the one that the Dallas cops did. So they started looking in the school book depository, started taking samples. None of the paper and none of the tape matched the tape and the paper on the bag that the Dallas cops had. So that means that the only the only possible solution was that the Dallas cops made the bag.
Right.
And the Warren Commission said, well, Oswald must have made the bag previously at some time previously and just happened to use the same tape and the same paper. That's ridiculous. Because the paper.
On a small aside, Gil, did you ever look into that envelope package that was addressed to Oswald and Irving that was
no.
found in the dead letter bin that had brown wrapping paper inside of it, but supposedly nothing else?
Yeah, I heard about that. I didn't really look into it. It's interesting.
Yeah, it was addressed to Lee Oswald, but at an address that didn't exist, like in Dallas. And then somebody had marked through that and wrote Irving, Texas on there. And they found it in the Nixie bin, the dead letter bin, a couple of days after the assassination, after Oswald's dead. And supposedly the only thing in there was brown wrapping paper.
Now let me give you another little thing here that I've got, and that is a memo from the FBI in Washington to the FBI in Dallas, and they tell them to go to the Texas School Book Depository, and this is their words now, determine that no curtain rods were found in the building. Right. Now they're not telling them go there and determine if any. They tell them go there and determine that no curtain rods were found in the building. Now, so what they're saying is you go there and you tell those people that they didn't find any curtain rods in that building. That's what they're telling them.
Yeah, exactly. And I think weren't some curtain rods found in the building?
I believe they were, because it says here, in order to establish that no curtain rods were found in the building, they want you to go and talk. They wanted them to go to talk to Roy Truly. Of course, there's the FBI and Dallas Police's key man, and to inquire whether he knows of any curtain rods having been found in the building. And I asked him if it would be customary for such a discovery to be called to his attention. Well, but they're telling him go there and establish that no curtain rods were found. This is what they want to do.
I don't remember seeing any curtains on any of the windows, at least not the warehouse floors.
Well, here's the interesting thing about it. They took a package of curtain rods that they got out of the paint garage and measured them, because Wesley Frazier and his sister Linnie Mae Randall had described the length of the curtain rods anywhere from 24 to 27 inches. Now, they never wavered from that, okay? And they went and measured the curtain rods that were in a package in Ruth Payne's garage, and those curtain rods measured 27 inches.
Right.
So, I mean, if he was carrying curtain rods, then they were pretty accurate with their description of the length of it. But that 27 inches, there's no way he could carry the rifle in that.
No, definitely not the 40-inch rifle. Not even broke down. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, and that's another thing with that supposed gun sack. That gun sack was made 2 inches too short. So that tells me that when they made the gun sack, they didn't have the rifle to measure it. The rifle had already left the building. The rifle had already left the building because it was 2 inches too short. And then when the FBI took a look at of course, the FBI doesn't get involved in the cover up until after Oswald's dead, and they get all the information, they get all the evidence. So the FBI turns around and looks at the bag and says, "There's no scratches on this bag. There's no evidence that the gun was ever in this bag. The rifle was ever in this bag. There's nothing in the bag."
Right.
There's no evidence that the rifle was in the bag. It's amazing when you start to look at the evidence and you say, how could you even prosecute this case? I mean, it's ridiculous. Every single piece of evidence is in question. Why is that?
Exactly. I mean, was it pure incompetence, or was it worse than that?
It's all the Oswald stuff. All this stuff having to do with Oswald. There's always questions. Why? I mean, I know this was a different era, a different time, where a lot of these procedures and protocols weren't followed to the T, because you didn't really have to back then. Things were a lot easier to prosecute back then, but still, I mean, you still want chain of custody of the evidence.
that was broken multiple times when it comes to a lot of the evidence in this case.
The CE 399. Just take a look at that bullet there, CE 399. That chain of possession doesn't begin until it reaches the FBI lab. With Robert Frazier, 4 people handled it before it even got to the FBI. None of them could identify that bullet as the one they handled.
The guy that supposhly found it said that wasn't the same bullet that he found, right? It was a pointy nose. Yeah. Like a hunting a shell.
Exactly. And then the FBI guy who supposedly got it first said he put his markings on it, and this bullet doesn't have his markings.
Right.
And he still identified it as the bullet he got from the Secret Service.
Wow. Yeah, I think I had a guy on the show many years ago who he put up I think it was $100,000 for anybody that could prove that the shells in evidence were fired from that rifle, and I don't think anybody's ever taken him up or even challenged him on it. What was his name? Barry Crush.
Yeah, okay, I've heard of him before.
Yeah, he wrote a book about it and put this challenge out.
The thing is, if I'm right with my theory that they changed the bolt, then he would lose a lot of money.
Well, you might want to look into that, Gil.
Well, yeah. Here's the thing now. I think this is all circumstantial. I'm not saying that this proves, that the bullets didn't match and the shells did. That proves my theory. There is one last thing to test, and that is because the FBI had this replica rifle. The thing is to test the replica rifle, test fire the replica rifle, and then compare those bullets with the bullets from 1963 and see if they went through that barrel. That would be the final step.
Didn't do that?
No, they never did that. Nobody's ever done that. And I'm saying that would be the last step for me to convince me once and for all that my theory is correct, that those bullets were fired from the replica rifle and not the CE 139 rifle. So someday, hopefully, somebody may do that. Maybe I don't like these government investigations. I think it has to be done privately because you can't trust the government to investigate itself. We've had 2 major government investigations, and both of them went. They both stunk.
Yeah, well, at least with the HSCA, they did determine that there was a conspiracy. Supposedly, another shot came from the grassy knoll, allegedly, and then of course, people argue about the acoustic evidence that it was based on. But then you look at like Josiah Thompson's new book, reverses all of that and concludes that the audio evidence was legit and that there was another shot from the grassy knoll.
Yeah.
So,
well, you take
the
shot videos and see what a head does when it's fired on by a rifle, and it doesn't move in the direction of the shooter. It moves in the same direction as the bullet. And when his head went backwards and to the left, that was a shot from the right front.
Well, yeah. I'm definitely of the opinion that at least one shot was fired from the grassy knoll area, if not 2, or the fence line, whatever you want to call it.
Right.
The throat shot could have been from the front. The head shot definitely was. Mm-hmm. It's crazy stuff, man. Crazy stuff.
I think the throat shot was a frontal shot. I think it went through the windshield and got him in the throat. And I did one video. Gee, I forget how long ago it was, but it was called "Was JFK Trying to Cough Up a Bullet?" And a lot of people made fun of it. They really thought it was hilarious. But if you look at that Zapruder film, and it's on my website, on my Gil Jesus videos, original videos made by me, you look at that video, and I concentrate on frames 225 to 237 when he's coming out from behind the sign. And you look at that video, and it's obvious that he's grabbing his tie with his left hand and pulling it to the left like he's trying to loosen it. And he's got his right hand cupped over his mouth, and his head goes back and forward like he's trying to cough something up. Now, I'm not saying it was a bullet, but it could have been it could have been a bullet that lodged against his windpipe and was obstructing his breathing, because he obviously had some kind of respiratory distress.
Right.
And then in that video, I present evidence of examples of people through history who had been shot in the throat and coughed up the bullet, sometimes even years later, that the bullet became lodged in their throat. So it's possible that, and especially when you see the doctors saying, that this was a wound of entry. This throat wound was a wound of entry. You've got 5 or 6 witnesses who saw the windshield of the car, and they're saying there was a through and through hole in that windshield. I don't care what the pictures say, because pictures can be doctored, but there was a through and through hole. You could almost stick a pencil through it. That's how big that hole was. And when you got the guy at Ford Motor Company saying we got the car on the day after the assassination, and we changed the windshield had a hole in the windshield. And then you get into the whole thing where the windshield was changed twice after that first time. It was changed a total of 3 times. And the first time, after they changed it the first time, they thought they had it. They damaged it on the outside. Well, the problem with damaging the windshield from outside the car, to create the crack, that's what they were trying to do. They didn't want to climb inside the car and throw a rock at it. So they stood outside the car and threw it. The problem with safety glass is it cracks on the side the opposite side of impact. So if the cracks were on the inside, that means the impact came from the front of the car. It was on the outside of the windshield. Okay. So what's his name? Kellerman, Roy Kellerman goes into the windshield now to change, and he feels the inside of the windshield, and the inside is cracked. He can feel the cracks on the inside. So they turn around, they replace that windshield. They crack it from the inside, so now the cracks are on the outside. See?
Yeah, I always thought, something triggered him to turn his head.
Because Kellerman said when he testified before the Warren Commission, they put the windshield in front of him, and they said to him, how's that windshield feel now? And he felt the inside, and he says it's smooth. But when he felt it in the garage, in the White House garage, it was cracked. So that windshield had been changed. Follow me? So
yeah,
that wasn't the same windshield. And that's another thing too. When you start to take a look at their testimony, when they said what happened, this is what they said. Kellerman said he heard a bang. He thought it might have been a gunshot. He looked to his right, which he's looking to his right where he thought it came from. He's looking towards the grassy knoll is what he's looking at. And he goes and he turns around and looks to his left. And he said at this time he saw Kennedy with his hands up around his collar. So he turns back around, and then a flurry of shots come into the car, which I believe is fragments. A flurry of shots come into the car, and he tells Greer, let's get out. We're hit. Let's get out of here. Because he knows Kennedy's hit because he saw his hands to his throat. And then Greer steps on it. That's not what the Zapruder film shows. What happens is he turns around, I think it's somewhere around frame 278. He turns around and looks back at Kennedy. Greer turns around and looks back. And his testimony was that he couldn't see Kennedy. He saw Connolly falling backwards, and he knew they'd been hit, and he said he stomped the gas right away. This is frame 279 when these guys are 280. These guys will turn around looking back. They know they've been hit, okay?
Right.
So what does he do? Greer turns around and looks forward. Kellerman looks forward, okay? At frame 304, Greer looks back a second time. And at this time, he slows the limousine down. And then when Kennedy gets hit in the head, you see them both duck down because of the flurry of shots come in, and he stomps the gas and gets out of there by frame 350. So they eliminate Greer's second look. And when Kellerman turns around, everything that happens from the time Kellerman turns around to the time the flurry comes in is eliminated. They don't talk about that.
Okay.
Yeah, so it's deception by omission. They're not talking about what happened between frame 304 and 350.
Yeah, because he's looking back when Kennedy's.
He's looking right at Kennedy when Kennedy's head explodes. Yeah, and he slowed the car down. Some people have said they've seen a version of the Zapruder film where the car actually stops. And people will swear up and down they've seen this version. I've never seen it, but people have said they've seen it. they've seen this version where it shows the limousine coming around the corner from Elmont to Houston, which the Zapruder film does not show. It shows the car coming like halfway down Elm Street. It picks up the limousine halfway. And Zapruder said he never stopped filming. So I don't know how that car disappeared coming around that corner. But anyways, so they say they see him coming around the corner, and then they see the car completely stop. And I've shown on the education forum a video that I did showing how that stop could be edited out to make it look like it was just a slowdown. So whether or not they did that, I don't know. I know there are some anomalies in that film. 157, I think, frame. I think 207 to 211 frames are missing. And there's another anomaly, I think, somewhere around. And that's not the only frame that has that. The Nix film has an anomaly at the time where the headshot comes in. And so there's a much more film. So some of these films have had some problems. Right, it just seems like right at the time of the headshot, they seem to have a problem with the film. And so I have my doubts about whether the Zapruder film, as we know it, is the full film.
Right.
But he did slow. He turned around, looks back, and he slows the car down. And here's another interesting thing that the Dallas police were told at Love Field. They were told that where the heck is it now? They were told that no matter what happened, they were not to change their position. It's amazing that they were told at Love Field that there would not be motorcycles alongside the president's car, and they were supposed to be. That's what the Dallas police said. Now,
originally wanted.
B.J. Martin. This is from a book called Murder from Within by Fred Newcomb and Perry Adams, 1974, page 33. B.J. Martin was one of the motorcycle officers. Said that on the morning muster, the 4 presidential motorcycle officers were ordered that under no circumstances were they to leave their positions. Now get this, regardless of what happened. So, yeah. So, I mean, come on. You're telling me they didn't know this was going to happen in advance? They had all kinds of warnings. People were warning you. People were flying to Washington telling the president, don't go to Dallas, they're going to kill you. How did all these people know Lee Harvey Oswald was going to kill the president, right?
Right.
How did David Brinkley's wife know? She sent a letter to Pierre Salinger. Don't let him come down here. Something terrible is going to happen to him. Everybody knew. I mean, what kind of a city is it that the police chief has to go on TV and tell the citizens to behave themselves?
Right.
I mean,
yeah, that's pretty
what
bad.
does that tell you about the atmosphere of the city? I mean, it's ridiculous. And then they pinned this murder on this poor Oswald. He didn't kill anybody. And finally, when he finds out, they deny him a lawyer. They don't let his family see him until Saturday because they don't want the family to get a lawyer for him. The family might, if they allowed a family to see him Friday afternoon, the family might be able to get a lawyer before they close of Friday.
Right.
So they don't let the family see him. They don't let him make a phone call till Saturday. And then they arraign him, and get this, they arraign him at 1:35 in the morning on a Saturday.
Right.
I'm saying, I've been to court before. I've never been to court at 1:35 in the morning. What the hell is this? You know, they arraign him at 1:35 in the morning. Well, they take him first to the midnight press conference where he's talking to the press. Jack Ruby is there. And I believe that this is where Jack Ruby was supposed to kill him. But Ruby got cold feet. He was afraid he might hit one of the officers.
He had his revolver in his pocket the whole time.
He was afraid he might hit one of the officers, and he was very friendly with the Dallas police, so he didn't want to try it. Yeah. So he didn't kill him. But when they arraigned, now keep in mind, when they arraigned Oswald at 1:35 in the morning, they had no evidence against him at all against killing the president. A lot of people don't realize this because they had not yet found the backyard photographs. They didn't. Officially, they didn't find those photographs until the second search of the Payne residence on Saturday afternoon after 2:30. So they didn't have those photographs. They couldn't connect the rifle with them. They didn't have the paperwork from the rifle, allegedly, until 4:30 in the morning when they finally found that. So this is at 1:30. This is 2.5 hours before, 2.5, 3 hours before. They didn't have that against them. What did they have against him? He left the building. That's it. They asked the
Supposedly
police
the
chief.
only unaccounted for.
They asked the police chief, what physical evidence do you have against them? Chief says, I can't discuss it. You can't discuss it because you don't have any.
Right.
That's why. You can't discuss it. I mean, you're telling everybody he lived in Russia and everything else. I mean, how's he going to get a fair trial? You know?
Oh yeah, it was from the word go. It was like that.
Yeah.
But moving on to the school book depository after the shots,
mm-hmm.
I've always thought two things about timing. Okay, when it comes to actually three things about timing when it comes to Oswald and the assassination and the Tippit murder. The length of time that it would have taken him to leave the depository, get on the bus, get off the bus, get to the Greyhound station, get the taxi, and get to his rooming house. Okay, and then go inside, change clothes, come back out, and then walk to the scene of the Tippit murder. And then, because the timing, when you really break it down and given the benefit of the doubt, it doesn't seem like there's just enough time for all this to take place. You know what I mean?
Yeah, 45 minutes. No.
Because even being nice, say he left. The murder happened at 12:31 p.m. Mm-hmm. Supposedly he's still in the building by 12:35 p.m. Say he leaves at 12:35. He's got to walk through all the mayhem, and then back down the main street to where he gets on the bus. Then he's stuck in traffic for who knows how long, a couple blocks, and decides to get off and then walk a couple more blocks to the Greyhound station. Give up a taxi to an old lady and wait for the next one, whatever he's doing. It's crazy.
And that traffic, it sounds like a couple of blocks. It's not that long, but you're talking about traffic is stopped.
Right.
It's not like it's moving 5 miles an hour. It's stopped. The traffic is stopped because you've got a crime scene ahead of you. This is on Elm Street. You've got a crime scene ahead of you. They're not going to let anybody. Well, they did. They let the traffic through after a while, but they shouldn't have. They should have blocked that street off. They should have done. But
right. You still had people everywhere, who were just heard the news or heard the shots, and
right.
You got traffic everywhere.
That area should have been sealed off.
Totally. And then you supposedly have Oswald getting let off at his rooming house 7 blocks or 5 or 7 blocks after his rooming house.
That wasn't Oswald. that wasn't Oswald, because the cab driver turns around and says that it's kind of funny, because the cab driver says that Oswald was wearing both his jackets. When he was shown during his testimony which jacket, they asked him which jacket was he wearing. He was wearing one over the other one. He couldn't make up his mind which jacket he was wearing because he wasn't. Right. It wasn't Oswald. It's funny because listen, let me tell you what I think, and this is just my own opinion when it comes to the cab. First of all, there was problems with the cab's timesheet.
Right.
Let me read you what I got on the website here. It says, examination of William Whaley's timesheet indicates that the fare the commission said was Oswald was picked up at the Greyhound bus station at 12:30, exactly the time the shots were being fired in Dealey Plaza. How could Oswald be firing his rifle at the motorcade and be in a cab heading home at the same time? So the commission explained it this way, that stating in its report that the 12:30 entry was not precise, that Whaley logged in times in 15-minute intervals. Okay, that's their report 161, page 161. But that was a lie, because if you look at his timesheet, volume 16, page 975, you look at his timesheet, you can see that numerous entries are not made in 15-minute intervals. There's one for 6:20, there's one for 7:50, another one for 8:10, another one for 8:20, 9:40, 10:50, like that. These were not in 15-minute intervals. They were full of crap. And so his, let's see, 12:30 to 12:45 at the Greyhound. Now, before that, it was 12:15 to 12:30, and then after that, it was 1 to 1:15. But then there's a problem with his description of his passenger. He couldn't identify the pants. He said that he was wearing the same jacket, two jackets, both of his jackets. His credibility wasn't very good. Now, then there's the problem with him selecting Oswald as the guy that was in his cab. He turned around and he said it was the number three man. Was it number 3 or number 2? Because he testified that he chose number 2 from the bus station, but his affidavit indicated that the man in the lineup he chose was number 3. That was Oswald. See, now he's saying he picked number 2. I signed that statement. He says now he's talking about his affidavit. He says, I signed that statement before they carried me down to see the lineup. I signed the statement and then they carried me down to the lineup at 2:30 afternoon. How can you sign a statement that's a sworn statement, an affidavit saying that you saw one guy when you haven't seen it yet?
Right.
You know? It's
so how do you think he got to the rooming house? Do you think he took the bus all the way, or do you think that Roger Craig?
I think Roger Craig was right.
Spotted him leaving.
I think Roger Craig was right because Roger Craig had 4 other people that saw him get in that Rambler. It wasn't just Roger Craig. The witnesses, one was Marvin Robinson. He was delivering his Cadillac to his house, and he had his employee following him, and he saw it too. Roy Cooper. He was taking the Cadillac home and then going back to work. Then there was a woman named Helen Forrest and a man named James Pennington. They all said that they saw Oswald run down the embankment and get into a Rambler, and then it took off. So I think I believe Craig. There's no reason for him to lie. And when he got there to the police station, he said, Fritz said, this is the guy that saw you leave. He says, I told you I left. And they didn't say anything about a Rambler, but he said something about a station wagon, and that station wagon belongs to Mrs. Payne. So
yeah, don't drag her into this.
Yeah, don't drag her into this. Well, Mrs. Payne did have a station wagon, but it wasn't a Rambler.
Yeah, but it wasn't white either.
Now here's an interesting thing. There was a Payne involved with the Texas School Book Depository. Okay. Now I don't know if you remember Warren Castor. Warren Castor was the man who brought 2 rifles into the building on Wednesday. He brought a 22 rifle for his son and a 30-06 for himself, a deer rifle. Okay. Now, on the day of the assassination, Warren Castor was having lunch with a guy named Vernon Payne, who was the head of the business school at the University of North Texas. Now, was his wife's car? I don't know. Anyways, the University of North Texas is very interesting in all of this because it was a hotbed for right-wing extremism. And one of the students that went there was involved in a gun running operation out of Fort Hood, Texas. And this was supposedly to get arms for what they called the second invasion of Cuba. And in the first invasion, the Bay of Pigs invasion, Castro was supposed to be dead before the invasion started. And I really think that this second invasion of Cuba may have been a code word for the Kennedy assassination. I believe that the gunmen were Cubans. From the description of the witnesses of the men they saw in the windows with the guns, being dark-skinned, I believe these guys were Cubans. And I believe that the military intelligence, there was like 8 to 12 military intelligence agents in Dealey Plaza. Not for security. If they were there for security, they would have had Secret Service identification. But I believe they did have Secret Service identification, and their purpose there was to make sure these Cubans got out okay. They got them in there.
That's a whole other thing, right?
Get them in there and get them out. Yeah, and that's what I think. That's the reason why I think one of the Dallas cops encountered a Secret Service agent on the grassy knoll after the shooting. I think this guy was really military intelligence.
But didn't Jean Hill say she encountered a Secret Service agent up there too?
Yeah, and there wasn't supposed to be any Secret Service agents in Dealey Plaza. I believe these guys with military intelligence with Secret Service identification, and their purpose was there to make sure that whoever was doing the shooting was going to get out okay. But anyways, that's just an opinion. I don't have evidence to prove that. But this William Whaley. So anyways, he picks the wrong guy in the lineup, by the way. He didn't pick Oswald. That's not true. So they're going back and forth during his testimony, which guy he picked and everything. Finally, he says that he picked this number 2 and he couldn't have been mistaken, because when they came into the room, on the lineup, number 4 came in first, then number 3, then number 2, then number 1. They came in from left to right. Okay, so number 4 would come in first, and so he picked number 2. They're trying to say he picked the second guy in, number 3, but that's not true. He picked number 2. So
Right.
Now here's the interesting thing about number 2. Number 2 is he never said he picked number 2. He said the man he chose was number 2. He never said Oswald was number 2. He said he picked the man number 2. Oswald was number 3. So Ford asked him, "Did you point him out with your hand?" He says, "No, sir, I did not. They asked me which number he was standing under, and he was standing under number 2. So what number? So then David Bellin asked him, "What number man in the lineup did you identify as seeing on November 22nd?" He says, "Number 3." So if Oswald was under 3 and being identified by Scoggins, that was Scoggins, by the way, who was under number 2? Well, 18-year-old David Edmund Knapp was the number 2 man in that lineup, and he lived at 2922 Alabama Ave. The interesting thing about Whaley's selection of Knapp is that Knapp's house was almost a straight shot down Beckley from where Whaley claimed given the cab ride to. So he got out, it's a 700 block, and his house was almost a straight shot down the road. So my thing is this. My opinion that Whaley's passenger was someone whose destination was further south on Beckley, someone who thought they could make it to the 500 block on $1, but had him stop short of it because he was watching the meter and couldn't afford to go any further. Maybe not necessarily this kidnap, but somebody whose destination was further south. This hypothesis is straightened by the fact that Whaley constantly described his passenger's destination as 500 block, rather than the specific address or name of a business, which one would normally give the cab driver.
Right.
And then his affidavit says that the boy got out of the car and walked in front of the cab and an angle south on Beckley Street. Oswald's apartment was north.
Great.
So they've got Oswald going past his rooming house 2 blocks, or 3 blocks rather, and then walking backwards. And what this guy is saying is, the cab driver is saying is, no, he got out of the car and he continued to go south. So that's why I'm saying I think this passenger was someone who lived further south, and that's why he told him the 500 block. He didn't give him an address. He lived further past that. And he thought he could make it on his $1 to the 500 block. When he saw that he couldn't, he had him drop him off. And
didn't William Whaley meet an untimely demise?
Yeah,
not too long after this.
He got killed in a cab accident. I think it was in '65. I think it was.
Yeah.
I got it down here someplace. Yeah, December 18th, 1965. Killed when his taxi was involved in an accident. There's a YouTube video of the damage of the taxi after the accident, and and just on the back of a hook as it's getting towed away from the scene.
I wonder if the brake lines were cut.
I don't know. This was a problem for a lot of the witnesses. A lot of the witnesses knew something and they were afraid to come forward because they were afraid of the Dallas police. When you think about it, you have witnesses who are meeting an untimely death, right? Who has their information? Who knows where they live? The very law enforcement people that they're reporting to. So now they're afraid to come forward because, hey, I don't want to get involved. The people getting death threats over the phone, and I don't
like
want
that young boy. What was his name? He got shot in the head there. Warren Reynolds.
Yeah.
Yeah. He changed his tune after that, right?
He didn't. Well, it was that shot, and plus a few weeks later, he had talked to General Walker of all people, and all of a sudden now some guy tried to pick up his 9-year-old daughter, get her in the car, and that was the final straw for him. He said, he changed his tune. He knew what was going on, and because he knew when he got shot that it had something to do with his not identifying Oswald.
Same with Benavides' brother, right?
Yeah, he was killed, and they suspect that he was killed by mistake. They thought they killed the wrong Benavides. They were trying to get old Domingo, because he
Right.
didn't want to identify Oswald. Then after his brother got killed, all of a sudden he was going to identify him. All of these people that identified Oswald after he was dead. Same thing with the guy there in front of the Texas School Book Depository, the star witness there. I can't even remember his name now, but he didn't identify Oswald right away, and he didn't identify Oswald until after Oswald was dead. See, once Oswald's dead, it doesn't make a difference because he's not going to trial.
Right. Yeah.
So people are going to say, yeah, it was him. Especially if they're hurt, if they're scared. But all of these people,
and if that's the official narrative,
right?
You back then you didn't want to look like the crazy guy who's going against the grain. You know what I mean?
Right. A lot of people change their opinions of that. I think I got a video on Orville Nix and being interviewed by Mark Lane, and Mark Lane says, "Where did you think the shots came from?" He says, "Well, I think they came from behind the picket fence." He says, "And where do you think the shots came from now, Mr. Nix?" He says, "Well, the shots came from the 6th floor of the Texas School Book Depository because that's what the Warren Commission said, and I believe the Warren Commission."
Right.
I mean, people doubted their own
eyes and ears. Yeah.
Yeah, they doubted their own senses because they said this, so it has to be, And this is the way it was with this. And then they got him on the bus, which of course Cecil McWater said he looked like the same description, but he would never identify him. And the only one that would identify him was a woman who had a stroke and claimed that his face was distorted. And she's the one that was the star witness. And then she identifies the shirt, not as the shirt that the guy was wearing that got on the bus, but the shirt that she was shown by the Secret Service agent. She said Secret Service agent. I think it was FBI. But
after he was arrested, right?
Yeah, after he was arrested, and then all of this stuff. It's one thing after the next. The FBI finished their report on the assassination on December 5th. That's 2 weeks after the assassination. The president of the United States has got his head blown off in the middle of a street in downtown major city in the United States, and your investigation is over in 2 weeks. Oh my God, no. Yeah. And they didn't interview the Tippit witnesses until January of '64, a month later. They didn't interview
and not all of them.
Yeah, and they didn't interview the kid that witnessed the Walker shooting or witnessed something after the Walker shooting until almost a year later. I mean, It's ridiculous to say that this wasn't an investigation at all.
No.
This wasn't an investigation.
It was a cover-up.
It was I know what
cover your ass up.
The word I was trying to think of before was a prosecutor's brief. That's what it was. It was a prosecutor's brief. It was the prosecutor's case against Oswald.
Yeah, which is why they wouldn't let Mark Lane represent him to the Warren Commission, like his mother wanted him to.
There isn't a court in the country, I don't think, and I don't think there's a jury that's ever been impaneled or a grand jury that would listen to one side of the story and come to a verdict. I mean, it's ridiculous. You listen to the charges against the guy, and that's it. He has no defense. And that's why they wouldn't let Lane do that, because this was all a frame.
All right, so let's go back to the rooming house for a second and Earlene Roberts and the incredible speed at which, well, according to Gladys Johnson, the lady that owned the house, she said that the police were there at 1:30
That's
to
pretty
search.
good.
Well, yeah,
That's pretty good.
because they hadn't even arrested Oswald yet by this point, and on top of that, they didn't know he was staying there. Supposedly, there's no way they could have known because it wasn't on his application. The school book depository didn't know about this address. I don't even think Marina or Ruth Payne knew exactly where he was staying. They knew his phone number and that he was staying under a different name. But I don't even know if they knew exactly what the address was of this place. So how so soon after the assassination and before he's even arrested at the theater are the cops there looking for this guy?
Well, that tells you that James Hosty was involved in this.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
I think so, because when he went to visit Oswald, Mrs. Oswald and Ruth Payne, they gave him the phone number. Now he could have made a phone call to the phone company, found out what the address was for that phone number.
Right, real easy. Yeah.
So he could have found out very easily. Hosty. He called the Texas School Book Depository on November 1st to find out if Oswald was working there, and they said yeah. So he knew where he was working, and he knew the phone number of where he was staying. So if the cops knew where he was, it's because they got that information from Hosty. That's what I think. I don't know, but
that's the only thing that could have happened, really.
Sure. And there's just no information. There's no way that he could have made it to the Tippit murder in time to kill Tippit.
No. Not by the time they say.
Yeah, because Mrs. Markham was trying to catch a bus when she witnessed Tippit's murder, and the FBI found out from the Dallas Transit System that during the afternoon hours on every weekday bus going through the downtown area of Dallas can be boarded about every 10 minutes at the corner of Patton and Jefferson Streets. That's where she was going, the corner of Patton and Jefferson. The bus is scheduled to pass this point at about 1:12 p.m. and every 10 minutes thereafter. So that bus that she was trying to catch, that she called the 1:15 bus, was scheduled to go there at 1:12. So now, if you take her, let's say 3 minutes, that she would need about 3 minutes to walk that one block, 2 to 3 minutes. She would have got there just in time to get the bus. And that puts the shooting, if you take it 3 minutes, that puts the shooting somewhere around 1:09. Now, Tippit made 2 calls to the dispatcher at 1:08, and the dispatcher never answered. According to the Dallas police transcript, Tippit called dispatcher twice at 1:08, and they didn't answer. So that tells me he must have had some kind of an emergency. Whoever this guy was.
On the car radio?
Yeah, he called the dispatcher. He called the dispatcher from the car radio at the scene where he was killed at 1:08. At 1:08. Now, when T.F. Boley,
they tried to say it was him, right? T.F. Boley. They tried to say that was him and not Tippit.
Well, no, T.F. Boley got on the radio afterwards, but he said when he got there, his watch said 1:10, and Tippit was already on the ground, and the shooter was gone. So she's saying it was 1:06. I'm thinking, because I'm going by the Dallas police transcript now, I'm thinking between 1:08 and 1:10. That's when he was killed. And if he was killed at that time, there's no way in hell that Oswald could have walked all that distance, unless he was a world record walker.
Right.
I don't even think he could jogging. I don't think he could make it running in that time. I don't think anybody ever broke the 4-minute mile at that time. But he was at 1:08. He called twice, and he didn't get an answer. Now the hospital record says that he was pronounced dead at 1:15. This is a police report that says that at the hospital he was pronounced dead at 1:15. Now, Oswald also had an alibi because Butch Burroughs was the ticket taker, and he also ran the concession stand at the Texas Theater. Said that Oswald came in between 1 and 1:07. So if Oswald was waiting for a northbound bus, like his housekeeper said, that she saw him at the bus stop heading north for a northbound bus, and if he was taking a northbound bus a couple of minutes after 1 o'clock, when she saw him at the bus stop, and he might have just taken a bus and gone right to the Texas Theater, because Butch Burroughs says he got in there somewhere between 1 and 1:07. Now Tippit wasn't even dead then, so he couldn't possibly have killed Tippit if all of this timing is correct.
Yeah, and I was able to go to Dallas, I think in 2019, and we got on foot, and I went to 10th and Patton, I went to the Texas Theater, I went to Oswald's rooming house, and when you get on the ground down there and you get the perspective of things, you realize that, okay, well, if Oswald was going to the theater, what the hell was he doing all the way down at 10th and Patton?
Right.
Because it's totally the wrong direction from his rooming house. and it just doesn't make sense. The whole thing doesn't make sense.
No. The white jacket they found under that Oldsmobile.
Right.
They got this tan jacket that has laundry marks and stuff that they never traced, and they couldn't prove was his. Marina Oswald said she always washed his jackets. He never sent them to a laundry.
Right. Yeah, it was made in California or something like that.
Yeah. It was made from a company in California, and they never ever determined where the jacket came from, and it probably wasn't even his, because there's no evidence that, other than her word, that she said that was his jacket. But where did the laundry marks come from?
Right. Unless he had bought the jacket secondhand or something like that. But again, you would probably take something like that out.
If she washed his jackets by hand, you would think that she would notice the laundry marks.
Oh yeah, for sure. Do you have any? Because I've thought about this a lot. If it wasn't Oswald, then who the hell was it? Do you have any suspects?
Well, I'll tell you, I that whole neighborhood, that Oak Ridge, that what was the name of it? Oak Cliff, that's what it is. I want to say Oak Ridge, I want to say Oak Bluffs. I want to say everything but Oak Cliff area was a bad area. They had a lot of criminals in that area, a lot of young kids that were punks. They referred to them back then. And so there's a possibility it could be a couple of them. A couple of them that might have even been marked down as witnesses. I think that Tippit recognized this guy, and that's the reason why he called in. That's why he called twice. I think he knew who he was. I think this was somebody from the neighborhood.
Do you think that Tippit was looking for Oswald specifically, or was he just following a general description?
Well, I don't think he was looking for Oswald. I don't think he was looking for Oswald, because the description that they had given could have been anybody.
Right.
They gave us such a general description of the guy they were looking for.
Yeah, and then the pictures of his cruiser, that to the side of the road there. If you look real closely through the window, you can kind of see it looks like a suspect sketch on his dash.
Yeah, there's something up there.
Something there, something weird there. Yeah,
something they were looking for. Somebody they were looking for, and he might have ran into him. And I don't think he was looking specifically for Oswald, but what's interesting about it is that as I'm clicking,
it just seems awfully damn odd that if it wasn't Oswald, then you have Oswald at the theater, and you have this suspect in the Tippit shooting running towards the theater and supposedly going in the theater without buying a ticket.
Yeah,
that's just a weird coincidence to me.
Well, I did something a little earlier this year called the Bad Boys of Oak Cliff, and talking about different places. Let me just run a little bit of it by you. This was a bad section of town. Oak Cliff was a bad section of town of Dallas. And one of the problems with high crime rates like this, areas with high crime rates, the residents tend to not want to get involved as witnesses because many of them fear retribution from perpetrators or their allies. The Oak Cliff section of Dallas was not without a share of young criminals and troublemakers. Several of these come to the forefront when we examine the murder of Dallas police officer J.D. Tippit. Two of the three teenagers who were used in the fourth lineup with Oswald were residents of Oak Cliff. And two other Oak Cliff criminals just happened to be witnesses to the Tippit murder, and that was William Arthur Smith and Jimmy Earl Burt. Although they were supposed to have been together, their stories differ greatly, and the evidence does not support either of their versions of what happened. These were two young men with troubled pasts. Smith was on probation for auto theft, and Burt was AWOL from the Army. Smith lived on the next street from murder witness Helen Markham and was a friend of her son James, who was out on parole for prison for a burglary at the time of the murder. If any of these guys were caught by police with a firearm, let's say they had a firearm, If any of them had been caught with a firearm in their possession, it would have been a violation of their parole or probation and meant jail time. For Burt, it would have been at least a year in the brig. These guys ran together and were real losers. Having been at the murder scene, they should have been treated as persons of interest instead of witnesses because they were known to police. Under normal circumstances with their police records, they would have been. As I researched this, I wondered if any of them could have been the real killer of J.D. Tippit. These guys were as bad as the record shows. They had to be known to police, especially the robbery and homicide division. This was right up their alley. There had to be mugshots on these guys. But were they known to Tippit? Could the prospect of prison be the motive that cost Tippit his life? Could this have been the reason why Helen Markham's story had changed every time she told it? Was she protecting somebody she knew? Was she fearful the killer was from the neighborhood and knew who she was and would kill her? Was her contradictory descriptions of the killer a mixture of two men? Many other witnesses came forward.
Didn't somebody say they saw two men? Didn't somebody say that?
Aquila Clemens.
Yeah.
Aquila Clemens.
I just wonder if her description of the two men match those two fellows.
Well, there's some clues here, and one of the William Scoggins, the cab driver that was parked around the corner, said that he didn't pay much attention to the man, that he was just used to seeing him every day. Now, Oswald didn't go in that neighborhood every day, but that was his testimony. Third volume, 325. He said he was used to seeing him every day. He wasn't talking about Tippit. He was talking about the guy that he saw the killer. Couldn't have been talking about Tippit because Tippit was out of his normal patrol sector. So this Tippit wasn't the guy he saw every day.
Well, there was rumors that he was that Tippit was getting with that waitress that lived right there, Maxie something or another.
Oh yeah, the one he was supposed to be having an affair with.
Yeah, I forget her last name.
And then you have Aquila Clemens, who said that this was she said that the man she saw was short and kind of chunky, and the other was tall, thin, and had a white shirt on and light-colored khakis. And,
one had bushy hair, right?
Yeah. Short and kind of chunky, she said.
Yeah, that doesn't sound like Oswald.
Now, she turned around 2 days after the shooting. She was told by a plainclothesman with a gun to keep quiet or she might get hurt. So.
Yeah, that's what she told Mark Lane, right?
Yeah, that's what she told him in the video interview. Now, here's Helen Markham. She chose Oswald. She picked Oswald in the lineup, even though she admitted under oath that she had never seen him before. They asked her, "Have you ever seen any of these men in this lineup before?" She says, "No, I haven't seen any of them."
Well, didn't they allude to the number 2 man or something like that?
Yeah. He led the witness, what they call leading the witness. This is Ball and Markham. Ball, did you recognize anyone in the lineup? Markham, no, sir. Ball, you did not see anybody? I have asked you that question before. See, he had interviewed her before her testimony. And this is another thing that the prosecutors did, the commission's counsel, told the witnesses how to respond. They interviewed them prior and they told them how to respond. And she said, "No, sir." He says, "You did not. I've asked you that question before. You didn't recognize anybody from their face?" She says, "From their face, no." "Did you identify anybody of these 4 people?" She says, "I didn't know nobody." He says, "I know you didn't know anybody, but did you did anybody in that lineup look like anybody you just seen before?" She says, "No, I had never seen none of them, none of these men. No one of the 4, no one of them. No one of all 4? No, sir." "Was there a number 2 man in there?" And then she says, "Number 2 is the one I picked." She picked him in spite of the fact that she had never seen him before.
Right.
So, I mean, you're telling me that this is a positive identification? You got to be kidding me. But this is what they come up with. They come up with positive identifications like this.
Unbelievable.
It is. It's I don't know. It's frustrating sometimes when you read this and you say, then she turns around and she can't identify the jacket that he wore. Well, because that wasn't the guy.
Right. Yeah, that light colored jacket would stand out pretty good.
Yeah. She originally said that he was a young white man. That was it. That was her original affidavit to the Dallas police, that he was a young white man. Then she told the Federal Bureau of Investigation that he was a white male, about 18, black hair, red complexion.
And Oswald looked like he was 30, not 18.
And then on my YouTube channel, I've got a video of her. She says she had a ruddy complexion and wore a light shirt, a brown jacket, and light gray trousers. Oswald had black trousers on. Then she told Mark Lane on the phone that the killer was short, stocky, and had bushy hair. And she denied saying that.
Yeah, I think somebody changed her mind.
Yeah, her description kept changing. And she told the police that the suspect threatened to kill her. He threatened to kill her at the scene if she opened her mouth. This is why I'm saying it could have been somebody from the neighborhood.
Mm-hmm.
And you can't. Her son, William, that was interviewed by Mark Lane, he told Lane that she lied on many occasions, even to members of her immediate family.
Yeah, that would mean she's scared.
Yeah. And her kids were nothing but trouble. Now, James Markham was James Markham was at the age of 16. He spent a month incarcerated at the juvenile facility at Gatesville, Texas, for burglary and escape. In 62, he spent 14 months at the adult correctional facility at Huntsville, again for burglary. He was paroled on August 23rd, 1963, and was out of jail when Tippit was murdered. He had a reputation as a troublemaker. This is her older son now. He was barred from the Oak Cliff bowling lanes, a hangout for teenagers, due to his previous misconduct. Another place the young people like to hang out was the Texas Theater, and there's no evidence that he was barred from there. And then he came up with this James Markham came up with this story about this guy, Jerry Tolliver, who was supposed to be friends with Lee Harvey Oswald, and how he met them and all this stuff. And so the police started looking around for this Jerry Tolliver, and come to find out there was no such person.
Yeah, that's weird.
But two of his friends were Smith and Burt. William Smith and Jimmy Burt that I mentioned earlier. Those were two of his friends. And I'm thinking maybe this was Tolliver and Oswald, and he was just using different names. But he's talking about these two guys. So the FBI interviewed Smith on December 12th at his brother-in-law's house. He told me he was in the area of the shooting to visit a friend who was living at 505 East 10th Street. But he wasn't sure if Burt saw the true shooting because he got to Burt's house before Burt did. In his testimony, he makes no mention of Burt being there. In the report, Smith told the FBI that he immediately went up to talk to Mrs. Markham because he saw the shooting and he saw the guy take off, and he ran up, and he said he ran up to Mrs. Markham, a neighbor of his. Yet Mrs. Markham, for all her versions, makes no mention of this neighbor talking to her. But she did say that the shooter threatened her. So this is and she does mention in the interview of part 4 of The Men Who Killed Kennedy, part 4, is that the Tippit killer ran up to her and she covered her eyes. So this is it. This is all interesting now. So in his Warren Commission testimony, Smith was asked if he ran up to Mrs. Markham to talk to her, and he denied it. But counsel never asked him why he told the FBI that he did. He also told the commission that he did not pursue the shooter, but he said he was there for 45 minutes. He was at the scene for 45 minutes. In the mid-1990s, he was interviewed by author Dale Myers for his book With Malice, and he told Myers that his conviction for auto theft was a result of a good kid hanging around with a bad influence, meaning James Markham. The gist of his story was that he had learned a valuable lesson and it was a mistake he would not repeat, but that was a lie. In fact, the Tippit murder was after he was convicted and placed on probation. If he was so repentant after his conviction, why did he testify in 1964, the following year, that he was still talking with James Markham? That's interesting. Now, Jimmy Burt turns around and says that he was at his brother Billy Burt's house at the corner of 9th and Denver Streets. They heard shots. He and William Smith were together, which William Smith never said. They jumped in his two-tone blue Ford and drove down to 10th Street, where they saw the officer lying in the street. This is what he told the FBI. Burt said that he parked his car in front of the police car on the same side of the street facing west. In other words, face to face with the cruiser on the same side of the street. But this is a problem, because Dallas Police Sergeant Pete Bonds took photos of the Tippit murder scene. He testified that he arrived around 1:40 and started taking photos within 10 or 15 minutes of arrival. Smith said they were there for 45 minutes. If Tippit was killed at 1:15, they should have been there till 2 p.m.
Mm-hmm.
But Bert's car is not in any of the crime scene photographs. Kind of reminds me of the brown paper gun sack.
Right.
You know, it's
Yeah,
supposed to be there, but it's not there in the crime scene photographs. So Bert said the man ran down Patton Ave and he ran up to the intersection of 10th and Patton just in time to see the man turn into the alley between 10th and Jefferson running west. And that was his story. He said that Smith returned to the site of the shooting, implying that Smith was with him when he ran up to the corner. In February 68, he gave an interview with Al Chapman, at which time he gave a different version. He said this time he and Smith were at 505 East 10th and saw the shooting there and ran down the street. Bert told Chapman that he had known Tippit for 3 or 4 years, something he never told the FBI. This time he told Chapman that he and Smith both ran down Patton to the alley and saw the killer heading west. In this version, he tells Chapman that someone said the shooter was at the library on Jefferson, so they followed the crowd down there.
Yeah, I know they were looking for the shooter, you know, in a couple of different places. The library, the church.
Anybody who was running, they were broadcasting it as a suspect. You know, suspect went into the library. Suspect went into here. The suspect was just seen in the church, and the suspect, and they're going running around like a bunch of chickens with their heads cut off, trying to get this guy.
Exactly.
You know.
And then somebody drops a dime that Oswald's at the Texas Theater, and
at the Texas Theater. And you know what? I'll tell you something else, Rob. What I think when they found that jacket, they found the revolver. I think the revolver was in the pocket of that jacket.
That's let's talk about that revolver and the bullets and the shells from that revolver, because there's something going on there as well.
Oh yeah, because the witnesses were the ones that found the shells, but the witnesses were never asked to mark the shells, which is something that you would normally do, because if the witness has to go to court, they have to testify that those are the shells that they found. So you would have the witness mark the shells. Same thing with the police officers. Anybody who handles that shell has to should put a mark on it, so that when they finally stand before the judge in testimony, they can identify that shell as the one they found. That's the exact shell. How do I know? Because my mark is right on it. That wasn't done. None of the witnesses marked the shells. The police officer marked the shells. The shells weren't marked until they got to the Dallas police detectives. So whether or not those are the shells that were found, because they were reported as 38 automatics. And the detective that said years later, he always said, well, I made a mistake. I didn't really look at the shell. It's marked right on it, 38 auto. The 38 special is a 38 SPL. 38
There's a revolver, right?
Yeah, the 38. Well, that's what this gun was. It was a revolver, but it had been rechambered. It was a 38 revolver, but it had been rechambered. It had been rechambered for 38 special bullets, which are a little bit smaller. So when these bullets are fired through the larger barrel, as a bullet is fired out of a handgun or any gun, it comes down through the barrel. It's spinning and it's moving forward at the same time. But these bullets were a little bit smaller, so what they were doing was bumping up and down on the inside of the barrel, which means they were picking up different markings. So from bullet to bullet, they weren't the same. You couldn't identify these bullets with any bullets. If you test fired the gun, it was worthless because the gun had been rechambered. And they shortened the barrel from 5 inches to 2.
I thought it funny too, you know, these spare bullets supposedly found in Oswald's pockets, you know, after they got him to the police station. You know, it clearly looks to me like these came out of you know, a bullet belt, you know, where they had been strapped in with leather.
A bullet slide or a gun belt, yeah.
Yeah. Like, you know, the shells had those kind of markings, and who has that? Well, the Dallas cops.
Yeah, exactly. They had been in there for a long amount of time. I mean, some of our part-time officers the guys didn't work all the time, but they had they had in their gun belts, they had bullets, and so they'd pull them out once in a while, and you see how much corrosion was on them. That's how I know that's where they came from. These were again stage props. This is all stage props that were added to the evidence, if you will, to prove that Oswald was the one. And they were never mocked, and by the witnesses, the people were shown the bullet shells and said, "Well, these are bullet shells well, I don't know. How do I know? You know what I mean? These are the bullet shells you found. I don't know." And another thing is that those bullets were never taken out of Oswald's shirt pocket. I mean, pants pocket, like they said he did. They said they searched him before the very first lineup. That's not true. Oswald was completely searched twice before he even went down to that lineup. Once by Paul Bentley, and that was and Paul Bentley said that Oswald was not allowed to keep anything. His pockets were emptied. And the second time he was searched by, let's see, I check my files here. He was
You'd think he would be searched as well, but right after he was arrested.
Well, he was.
You don't want to
He
get
was
the guy
searched.
in the back of a police car and have him be able to pull a knife out and stab you.
He was searched by Bentley at the time of his at the time of the arrest in the Texas Theater. He was searched by Bentley, and he was searched again.
Yeah.
So
I think they would do it upon arrest, and once they get him to the station, and
he was searched again. He was searched again when he got to the state. When they got him to the station, he was searched again.
Yeah, they processed him and put him in the cell, and
they couldn't. He didn't have anything. The time he was searched the second time, his pockets were completely empty. He says, "I searched them good and I found nothing." So to say that
he had to know the fix was in at some, relatively early. You're up against something bad here, buddy.
Yeah, and well, they didn't tell him anything about the president. They told him about the police officer, but
which he denied shooting.
Yeah. And
that whole business with the two wallets and now, again, Bentley comes into play with that as well.
When they took him down, there was Sims and Boyd were the detectives that took him down to the show up, but M.G. Hall was also there with them. He was the third officer that went down there with him, and he never mentioned anything about them searching him and finding a bus pass or finding any bullets on him. This one piece of evidence from the FBI file, teletype, said that Paul Bentley advised he completely searched Oswald and nothing was left in his pockets. J.W. Fritz, homicide, Oswald was completely searched following his arrest and allowed to keep nothing. And then in the second search, it was C.T. Walker, police officer C.T. Walker says, "I searched him good but found nothing." So he was searched twice before Sims and Boyd said they found these unfired rounds in his pants pocket and a bus pass in his shirt.
Yeah, the magic bus transfer.
Well, here's the thing: when you search a suspect, you usually have them empty their pockets somewhere on the table or whatever. If it's a car and you're searching them outside the car, you have them empty their pockets on the hood of the car. Then you search them to make sure that they did take everything out of their pockets. They're not hiding a weapon or contraband, whatever. You search them after they've emptied their pockets. So here's Bentley searching him and saying, he wasn't allowed to keep anything. There was nothing in his pockets after he was searched. And then you have Walker, C.T. Walker, Charles Truman Walker, saying, "I searched him when we got him to the station and found nothing." So how the hell did these bullets just appear in his pants pocket and a bus pass appear in his shirt pocket after he's been searched twice completely? It doesn't make sense. I believe these things were planted on him And for what it's worth, that's my opinion, because the evidence just shows that he was searched. And they can argue,
that
well,
along with the whole AJ Heidel identification, that tied him directly to the rifle. I mean, that was his undoing there.
Well, let me tell you this. Let me put this by you and see what you think of this.
Okay.
If somebody ordered that handgun, okay, ordered that handgun was ordered by someone, and someone in authority, maybe somebody in the post office, maybe Harry Holmes, or maybe one of the police officers. Somebody ordered that gun, and they had that fake ID.
Mm-hmm.
The handgun comes in. They put the slip in the post office box. Holmes gets the slip out of the post office box, sees that the handgun's arrived at REA Express. Okay, so he takes $20 or $21 because there was a COD fee on, I think, on that, $1.27 or so. I think it was something like $21.22 or something that he owed for that handgun. Goes down to the REA Express office, shows his badge, says a postal inspector. I got a friend of mine who's in the hospital. He ordered a gun here. He asked me to pick it up for him. This is his ID. He gave me his ID. I'm wondering if I can pick it up. So who in the REA Express is going to say to anybody with a badge, no, you can't have it?
Right.
Back in those days, they're going to say, sure, here's the gun. He's a buddy of yours. Here, take it. I trust you. You're a cop. You're somebody in authority. All right. So I say to them, well, where's the evidence that Oswald received the handgun? Crickets again. Okay.
Exactly.
Who gave Oswald? Who handed out that handgun in the REA office? Crickets. Nobody knows. FBI didn't want to know.
Just like the rifle, problems with that as well.
Yeah. So what happens? Westbrook's got the fake ID in this supposedly in this wallet, right? Mm-hmm. So he's got this. He's the one who finds the jacket.
He's at all three crime scenes.
He's the one who finds the jacket. So what's the chances of him taking that pistol and what they used to call a throwaway? Okay.
Right. Yeah.
He takes that pistol. He hands it to what's his name there, the police officer that got was it McDonald? I don't remember.
Yeah, in the theater. Yeah,
in the theater. Hands him the gun. McDonald goes over to Oswald and goes to stick it in his waist, and Oswald throws a punch at him.
Mm-hmm.
And then next thing you know, they're struggling over the gun. And McDonald says, "I got the handle." How the hell did you get the handle if he's pulling the gun out on you? Right? And then one of the witnesses say, "I see the police officer struggling with this guy." He doesn't say that Oswald has the gun. He says one of them has the gun.
Right.
How do you know McDonald didn't have the gun?
Well, you would assume that the police officer going into the theater to arrest a suspect would have his gun drawn, or a gun drawn.
Yeah.
Not the other way around, because from what all the people in the theater, which of course the list of witnesses in the theater miraculously disappeared. We do know a few, like George Applin, but from what they say, Oswald was calm, cool, and collected, and sat in his seat until the cops came in, and then
tried to plant the gun. Happened. Try to plant the gun on him.
And they said, "It's all over now."
It's all over now, pal, for you. Try to stick your hand in my pants. I'll fix you. Boom.
Yeah.
And I wouldn't be surprised. I wouldn't be surprised because the fellow from the shoe, Johnny Brewer, from the shoe store, when he went in the door with the police, he must have told them where he was. He must have told them which guy it was that he saw come in. They didn't go right to him. They didn't go right to him, though. They started searching people around in the front. Turn the lights on, start searching people around in the front. He should have known that was the guy. He saw him go in.
Yeah, because they were asking around and stopping at other people first.
Right.
And Oswald just sat there the whole time until they got to him.
Well, he ain't got nothing to hide, right?
Yeah.
So they turn
at
around,
that
have
point,
this big fight. He's screaming and yelling. He wants his rights, and he wants a lawyer and all this stuff. And this is police brutality and excuse me, all of this Oswald stuff.
unbelievable. I mean, that's why I do this show, Gil. I mean, I'm 195 episodes into this show, 30 some over at the other show I do with my buddy Doug about the Kennedy assassination. And there's a never ending supply of things to talk about and explore.
Oh, yeah.
This case from top to bottom is questionable. You can question just about any little aspect of this and pull it apart and be like, okay, this is messed up here. This is messed up here. What's going on here? It's insane.
And you know what? It's typical. It's typical for the South in that time. When I started doing some reading on civil rights, on the civil rights and the violence in the South, how bad it was down there. Like let's say you're a black man who's been accused of a crime, not a major crime, but a crime. You go to jail.
Yeah, chances are you're going down. Yeah.
Yeah. So what happens is you make bail, but the sheriff don't let you out till like midnight. And there's a big dark road down the road. Yeah, the road's nice and dark. And down there in the back of a pickup truck is a bunch of Klansmen waiting for you to come and walking out of that jail cell. And when you do, they're going to serve you Southern justice, and you're going to find yourself hanging from a tree. Tomorrow morning, it's going to be over. This is exactly what they did to Oswald. They brought Jack Kennedy downtown Dallas, unprotected. Okay. Now we already talked about how the motorcycle guys said, they told the motorcycle guys, look, whatever happens, you hold your position, don't move.
Right.
Okay. Unprecedented. The Emory Roberts in the backup Secret Service car, the agents start to come off the car to go to protect the president. He calls him back. All right. Mm-hmm. Fortunately, Clint Hill didn't listen to him, but he just about made it to the car. But the other guy driving the limousine slows the car down almost to a stop. And then
in the middle of a flurry, yeah.
And when the shooting starts, excuse me, instead of stepping on the gas, he slows down. They take the general who usually rides in the front seat, and you look at the motorcade pictures and motorcade videos, you'll see that a general usually rides in the front seat of the car between the two Secret Service agents. They get him out of there. Why? Because they know there's going to be shots coming from the front. They got to get him out of the line of fire. So they get him out, and they move Admiral Berkeley. Instead of having the press on a flatbed truck in front of the president, they moved them into convertibles way back in the motorcade. This is all they're doing. All of this to get people out of the line of fire so they don't hit innocent people. They want the president, okay, and that's what they want. They don't want to kill anybody else. This is all planned. You look at it. You watch the motorcade. I've got the whole motorcade on my website. You watch the motorcade from left field, and you watch Johnson's convertible and how far back it stays away from those two cars, the limousine and the backup car. It's like these two cars are out on an island all by themselves. They knew something was going to happen. They might not have known exactly where it was going to happen, but they knew something was going to happen, and they stayed as far away from those two cars as they could. It's amazing. I mean, when you look at it, you say, how can you not tell it's planned? How can you say that this was one guy with a piece of junk rifle sitting on the 6th floor of a warehouse that got off 3 shots in world-class time and accuracy? Nobody has ever duplicated what he did.
Right.
Can you put
nobody's
me on
ever duplicated C399 and the condition that it was in after it supposedly did what it did.
Right. This bullet didn't hit anybody. They proved that when they tested it, the wounds ballistics. When they tested the wounds ballistics, they found out that this bullet didn't do that, because every bullet they fired just into a wrist deformed and mushroomed the nose. This bullet didn't hit any bone.
No, definitely not.
And like I told you earlier, I don't believe that this bullet was even fired from the depository rifle. I believe this bullet was fired somewhere else, maybe into hay or gelatin or something.
Yeah, or into water, something like that.
It was fired into something where it would be minimal damage to the bullet. because they had to have a bullet to prove that it came from that rifle.
Unbelievable.
Yeah, I think the whole case is crazy. When I first got into this, I was like everybody else. I want to solve it. Who was it? The CIA, the FBI, organized crime. That's what I was into. And then finally I said, you know what? I got to sit back. Let's take a look at the case instead of doing that, because I'm not getting anywhere. I'm not solving anything. I'm going down this rabbit hole and that rabbit hole, and there's just no end to it. Let me just look at the case and see what they did with this case. And what I've been able to find is amazing. It's just I don't know how else to say it. And for anybody to believe the Warren Commission, you got to walk around with your eyes closed.
Oh, definitely. That's one thing that I've always said. With this case, it will behoove you to think outside the box a little bit and to broaden your perspective and your mindset about the case. Because as much as documents and from our government go, I don't think we'll ever see the proverbial smoking gun documents.
No,
I'm sure they've been destroyed long ago.
I agree.
You know what I
with
mean?
You. Yeah. Things like this aren't put down on paper.
Yeah, and what we're left with is a box, of 1,000-piece puzzle that somebody shook up and dumped on the ground, and it's up to us and people like us, to try to put the puzzle back together in the correct shape or form. And
the thing that ticks me off about this, and in a way it kind of scares me, is that all of these CIA documents that continue to be locked up and kept away from people, it bothers me because their argument is that they're protecting sources and methods. Well, all the sources are all gone. So the only thing they're protecting is methods. And if they're protecting their methods, that means they plan to use these methods again in the future. And that's kind of scary. That kind of pisses me off.
My perspective is that the methods from 60 years ago hopefully have changed from the methods that they're using today.
Yeah.
As far as spycraft or any kind of covert operations go, I would think and hope that with technology, moving forward, that their methods are just a little different than what they were doing back in the early 60s.
Right.
But
and then you have the murder of Oswald, and people will say, well, how could Jack Ruby possibly know when they were bringing Oswald down? Well, he couldn't. He couldn't possibly know when they were bringing Oswald down. All they had to do was that they had to wait to bring Oswald down until Jack Ruby was in position. Ruby didn't have to know when they were bringing Oswald down. All they had to know is that Jack Ruby was in position. When he was in position, then they bring him down. And you know what? Like I was going to say before, and I got kind of sidetracked off it. They brought Kennedy down with no protection right out in the open into an ambush in Dealey Plaza. Now, they did the same thing 2 days later with Oswald. They brought him right down into an ambush with no protection. They had nobody walking on the side of him. They had nobody watching the crowd, nobody. He just stepped out of the crowd and boom, that was it. And when you look at the picture, nobody's looking at him. And then one of the detectives, James Lavelle, the one with the cowboy hat that was handcuffed to Oswald, says he saw Ruby coming out of the corner of his eye with a gun. Why didn't he yell? Why didn't he yell gun? Why didn't he grab Oswald and throw him to the floor or something? Do something. Why didn't he take evasive measures? He's leaning
back out of the way.
Yeah, he's leaning back out of the way, looking at Ruby like, oh, here he is. Don't shoot me.
It's a duty to protect the prisoner at that point. Hey, you do something.
They didn't protect the president and they didn't protect the prisoner. And the worst part about it is they had been warned ahead of time that somebody was going to try to kill Oswald. They
Probably
had been
by
warned.
Jack Ruby himself.
They had, according to Billy Graham, he was on the desk that Saturday night, and he said he claims the voice he heard was Jack Ruby. He didn't know it at the time until Ruby killed Oswald. He remembered that was Ruby's voice. That was his story.
He knew Ruby really well. Yeah.
Yeah. So they knew. The FBI had been warned. The sheriff's department had been warned, and they passed that on to the Dallas police that somebody was going to try to kill Oswald. Again, what does that say about the atmosphere in this city? Because when he was arrested, he couldn't get a lawyer. None of the lawyers in the city would offer to help him. Criminal lawyers. They had to send somebody from the civil bar down to talk to him to see if he wanted a lawyer. And he said, well, if I can't get my lawyer, then I'll talk to you. I'll talk to you guys. Mm-hmm. And so he turned around and come out and said, Oswald said he didn't want a lawyer, which is not the truth. But that's what they were saying. Oswald, they're telling everybody, ACLU, everybody, oh, Oswald doesn't want a lawyer. But every time you see him on video, what's he saying? These people will not give me legal representation. They will not allow me to have legal representation. Now, by law, they were supposed to. When he went before the judge at 7 or 7:30, somewhere in the 7 o'clock hour, he went before the judge to be arraigned for the Tippit murder. Now, the law says, the Texas law said that if a defendant was an indigent, couldn't afford a lawyer, and he wanted a lawyer, then the judge had to assign a lawyer to him. Now, he went in there and he claims that he told the judge that he wanted a lawyer. And
we didn't have any money.
He didn't have any money or nothing. He wanted a lawyer. And what happened when that was a justice of the peace / Judge David Johnston. When he testified to the Warren Commission, he said he couldn't Oswald said something, but he couldn't remember what it was. He asked the police officers, what happened during the hearing? Did Oswald ask for a lawyer? They said, yeah, well, I can't remember what was said. None of the police officers could remember what Oswald said. One of the detectives said, I can't remember what the judge said, and I don't remember what Oswald said. All of a sudden, they all got amnesia. They couldn't remember what Oswald said. He's saying he's asking for a lawyer, and they're supposed to give him one by law, but they didn't. And the reason, and then that night, this is the reason why I say they arraigned him without any evidence against him for killing the president, okay? Because Jack Ruby was supposed to kill him at that midnight press conference. That wasn't even going to be an issue, that they didn't have evidence against him. Jack Ruby was supposed to kill him, but he didn't. Then after he was arraigned, then all of this evidence starts coming in all of a sudden against him after he's arraigned. But Ruby finally...
They knew they were going to have to move him, yeah.
They knew you're going to have to turn him over to the sheriff's department. But see, they had to kill him before he got to the sheriff's department, because once he goes over to the county sheriff's department, they lose control of the suspect. He can tell them, he's going to tell them everything. He's going to tell the sheriff deputies everything, and they're not involved in this conspiracy. See? They're not involved in what's going on out there, because three of them
had to happen at that transfer. If it hadn't happened by then, it had to happen then.
It had to happen. That was their last chance to get him before they had to lose custody of him. Right. Before they had to transfer the custody of him. And there's no telling what he was going to tell the sheriff's department deputies when he got over there.
And who was in charge of the transfer, every aspect of it?
Yeah.
Captain Will Fritz.
Yep. Fritz was there, and they wanted to, well, Fritz claims that he wanted to transfer him at night, but the chief was against it because he was afraid if any shooting started that one of the officers would get hit. And, you know, if you're being shot at in the dark, it's kind of hard to find out where the shooting's coming from. So the chief kind of nixed
that little piece of film, you know, when Oswald's getting shot, and Fritz is like 10 feet in front of him and around a corner with his gun drawn when Oswald, right after Oswald gets shot.
Yeah.
Unbelievable.
And the thing is, they said that they gave a signal to bring Oswald down. That was the signal that Ruby was in position. They said they gave an all clear signal.
Right.
And that all clear wasn't for the car being in position, because it wasn't. It was still backing up as they were coming out. So that car wasn't in position.
Horn honking.
Yeah. The car wasn't in position. So the all clear was for them to know that Ruby was in position. That's what I believe, because the car wasn't there.
Yeah, I think so too. Well, Gil, man, I could talk to you all night and day about all this stuff, and I definitely want to have you back on the show in the future.
Oh, yeah, you know how to get in touch with me. You know how to get in touch with me. We'll get into a
bunch of other stuff, you know, that you've been working on as well. But tell everybody again where they can find your work.
All right. My website is www.giljesus.com, GIL-JESUS.com. The name of the website is Was Lee Harvey Oswald Really Guilty? And it's a work in progress. I'm adding stuff as I go along. As I find some more stuff, I'm going to be putting more stuff in there. But it's interesting. It's got a lot of links to other websites that might have information your listeners might be interested in. And I've got some documentaries on there about the single bullet theory and some of the motorcades, witness videos, some original videos I made myself. There's a whole bunch of stuff on there that's pretty cool for anybody who's interested. And that's about it.
Yeah, man. And also you have a bunch of threads over at the Ed Forum as well.
Yeah, I post regularly over at the Education Forum and at the JFK assassination board. And that's
Gotcha.
jfkconspiracyforum.com, freeforums.net. I post over there too if anybody wants to read those. It's pretty much the same thing. I post the same thing in both forums.
Gotcha. Well, Gil, I called you Gil Jesus, and I was trying to
That's
make
all right.
you Latino there.
That's
sure.
okay. That's all right. I've been called worse than
I
that.
like it. Gil
Believe me.
Jesus. I like it.
I've
Now
been
I
called
know.
worse than that, especially on the news groups. They really like to attack me. But
I bet.
but that's okay. I'll keep fighting the good fight. And it was
Gotcha.
great talking with you, Rob. And I hope to hear from you again. And we'll do this again sometime. I had a lot of fun.
Absolutely. You hang on for me, Gil.
All right, my
All
friend.
right, folks. I'd like to thank Gil Jesus for coming on the show. Again, his website is gil-jesus.com for all things Kennedy assassination related that he's been working on. And feel free to follow me on Twitter at the Lone Gunman 7. Facebook page is, of course, the Lone Gunman Podcast, where you can find anything. And make sure you're listening to Quick Hits, JFK News and Notes podcast that I do with my buddy Doug Campbell, who is the host of the Dallas Action, which is another fine podcast all about the Kennedy assassination. That's it for this week, and then talk to you soon. Thank you, folks, and thank you, Gil.
Thank you.